Hey guys, I'm Mr. C. Welcome to this week's geometry video. So I am either your geometry teacher or I'm someone else's geometry teacher, but it doesn't matter because every geometry student at Assabet Valley Technical High School is doing the exact same assignment. So here it is, circles and specifically graphs and equations. So it's slightly different than the content we did last week. And this video, excuse me, this video will have three parts. Part one is kind of the big picture, kind of the overarching themes and skills that you'll use throughout both of the assignments. Part two will be the IXL wrap up, so going over your IXL assignment. And then part three will be the paper assignment preview, the paper assignment kind of, well, anyway, you guys are going to see when you get there. So anyway, let's get going here. First of all, the big picture, right? Now, I know equations and graphs of circles can seem complicated. It can seem confusing. But in the big picture, only two things matter. What is the center of the circle, or in other words, where is the circle, right? And then what is the radius of the circle? In other words, how big is the circle, right? So just to give you an example here, I have a circle that I actually took from your IXL assignment, right? And I'm looking, where is the center? Okay, it looks like we've got 0.3. Try to get rid of that there. We got 0.3. Oh, it's doing it again. Hold on. Okay, so we've got 0.3 is your x coordinate. It looks like 0.6 is the y coordinate. That is the center of the circle, right? So we'd say the center is 0.36. And then what is the radius? Well, let's see. I go from the center to any point. So let's just say here, right? 1, 2. It looks like the radius is 2. Basically, the distance from the center of the circle to any point on the circle is 2 units. So we will say the radius is 2. So if you got what I just did there, you've got the only two things that matter, the center of the circle and the radius of the circle. Okay, let's keep going here. Now, for equations of circles, which students tend to think is a lot more complicated, and I totally get it, but the same two things are the only two things that matter, right? So I'm looking at this here, my center, all right, the center is 0.00, or in other words, the origin, right? And the radius, I guess I'll just do the same thing. I'll go from the center to any point on the circle. It looks like that is 6 units, right? My radius is 6, right? And then it's just a matter of filling in the blanks, right? So here you've got your standard form equation, right? Some of you guys that like formulas, right, might call this the H and might call that the K, right? For those of you guys that like that formula. And if you do, I'm not going to stop you. Use that formula. And then here, this is our radius, right? So our radius is 6, right? So let's see. So we got 6 goes here, right? My 0, 0 goes here, right? And then, of course, you probably would see the equation in simplified form. So if it's going to be x minus 0, right, you just write it as x, right? If it's going to be y minus 0, yeah, just write that as y. And then 6 squared is 36. So there is the simplified equation of this circle. Okay, now I know that was a kind of a basic example because the center was the origin, but let's see what happens when we start shifting that circle around, right? Here is another one from your IXL assignment, right? So let's see. So we've got the center here. All right, so this is the same one I used before this. So the center is 3, 6. All right. And the radius is the same as it was before. It is 2, right? So I just fill in the blanks, right? The center, right? 3, 6, right? And then the radius is 2, right? Okay. Now, as far as simplifying that, right, you would just, right, the only thing that you would really write differently, I guess, is really, you would just square that 2, right? So you would end up with 4, right? Right. Don't worry about foiling this, expanding this, anything. Just leave it in the standard form equation. That is all you have to do, right? Done deal, game over, you win. Yeah, so one of the things that students tend to get confused is why is this minus, right? Now, I guess what I always say right now, first of all, if you formula people, you're right, you could just say, oh, hey, you're just filling the formula. That's H, that's K, that's the formula. That's how it is. Just mindlessly plug things in. Sure, if that gets you to the end of the day, do what you do, right? But for that student out there that wants to know, well, why are we subtracting, right? And if you're asking why are you subtracting it, basically what you're doing really is just zeroing it out, right? What minus 3 equals 0, right? Well, it's 3 minus 3 equals 0, right? And what minus 6 equals 0? Oh, it's 6 minus 6 equals 0. So that tells you kind of where the center will be, right? What you have to do to zero this out. Now, why is that how it is, right? If you just go back to the original equation here, right? This is the one that we did before, right? Where it was x minus 0, y minus 0, and you remember it was just, yeah, x squared plus y, right, squared. And what would you have to subtract to make this 0? Well, nothing, right, which is because the center is already 0, right? But then when it's shifted, right, all of a sudden we have to say, well, how would we get this back to that origin? Well, how would we zero this out? Well, you would have to, right, if this is 3, right, what minus 3 equals 0? It's positive 3. Anyway, if that just confused you more and you just like using the formula, then by all means, just use that formula and go with what got you here. All right. Now, what if you need to graph it, right? What if you need to graph it? Well, if you need to graph it, right, just do the reverse, right? So here, right, remember the only two things that matter are center and radius, right? I'm zeroing this out. What would I have to subtract? Well, hey, it's just 0, right? Here, right, how do I, oh yeah, that's just 0, right? And then here, well, I guess what I really have to do here is I have to figure out, well, what's the square root of 25, right? Because that's going to tell you what number would go into this blank. So if you're doing the reverse, yes, you have to take this value here, which is r squared, right? And you have to figure out the square root of that, right? And that's what number is going to go here, right? So anyway, back to you formula people, right? There's your H, there's your K, right? And there's your R. Right, so anyway, what is the center? Well, the center is 0, 0. What is the radius? Oh yeah, the radius is 5. So all you're gonna do now, if it's time to graph, is you plot your center, and then I just go out in 4 directions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? I go up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I go over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? I just draw the circle. All right. And there you go. I know you guys could probably draw a better circle than me. If you really want to go crazy, you could use a compass to make a perfect circle. But anyway, that's as good as you need for the purpose of these assignments. All right. Okay, now here, this is a little more complicated because this time the circle is being shifted around, right? Now, so here, right, how would I zero this out, right? What plus 5 equals 0? It's actually negative 5, right? Okay, now minus negative 5 is the same as plus 5, right? So that's kind of the reason why I do minus negative 5. If you like my strategy of zeroing it out, then you just know it's negative 5. But for you formula people, right, minus negative is the same as plus. Okay, and then over here, right, this is pretty simple because it already says minus, right? So this is 4. And then here, of course, in order to figure out what goes in the blank, I actually got to do the square root of 16, which you guys know is 4, right? And it goes back to the only two things that matter when you're graphing equations of circles. What is the center, right? Negative 5, positive 4 is my center, right? What is my radius? My radius is 4, in other words, the square root of 16. And so now I plot that. Negative 5, 4, okay. And then my radius of 4. So I'm going to go over in every direction, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, down 1, 2, 3, 4, over 1, 2, 3, 4, up 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, you guys probably are drawing much better circles than me. But hey, for the purpose of this assignment, that circle is perfect. All right. Okay, so again, with anything, if you need to go back and rewatch this, by all means, go back and rewatch this. And I know I talked about kind of 2 techniques as to what goes into these blanks here, right? Some of you guys want to live and die by the formula, and if you do, that's totally cool. Live and die by that formula, right? If you like my technique of asking the question, what zeroes out the y, x and y values, then do that, right? Either way is going to get you the same destination. So anyway, I believe this concludes our introduction, and now we're going to get into the assignments. But again, if you got to go back and rewatch that, or you got to watch anything a little more slowly, please go back and rewatch it, because truth be told, I'm not going to be telling you anything new as I'm going over these assignments. Everything that you need to know, right, you can find in the big picture. So in other words, what we've kind of already done. So now IXL wrap up. Okay, now I'm going to do this relatively briefly because I know you guys have those hints, right? The IXL is pretty cool because it allows you to get hints and see examples if you need to. But anyway, let's talk about that first one, V1, center of a circle, right? And yes, this was actually as easy as it looks, right? All you had to do is what are the coordinates here, right? So it looks like my x would be 0 at that center point, and my y would be -3. Yep, that's it. That's all you had to do. Here, what's that center? Okay, it looks like it's x is 3, and y is 6, it looks like, right? And that's it. That's all you have to do. What are the coordinates of the center of the circle? All right, now V2, radius and diameter of circle. I guess the only curveball here really is when they ask for diameter, right? Because you can look at this and say, oh, the radius, I just go from the center to the point on the circle. Oh yeah, that's 6, and that's pretty easy to see, right? But then questions that are asking you what the diameter is, well, you just double it, right? If it's 6 from here to here, the radius, right? The diameter, which is 2 radiuses, right? Just 6 times 2, which gets you 12, right? So again, those questions, very straightforward. The only hiccup might be if you mix up radius and diameter, but that's how you would solve that. All right, now, if they give you an equation, right? Now this might be a little tricky, especially if they're asking you for the diameter, because the diameter isn't even in the equation at all. But all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill in the blanks here, right? What is +2? Well, that's like minus -2, right? This isn't shifted at all, so this would just be 0, right? And then this, well, the square root of 4 is 2, right? Which is why this is 2. Okay, so some of this isn't important. Like the center, -2, 0, for the purpose of this equation where they're asking us what the diameter is, center doesn't matter, right? But I just figured we'd go through the process. The radius is 2, right? And then the diameter, as you guys remember from my last example, if they do ask you for the diameter, all you have to do is just double that radius, 2 times 2, and the answer is 4. Right? I just want to be clear, I'm not squaring this, right? I am just doubling it. Just a coincidence that 2 squared and double 2 is 4. So anyway, that was the one type of question on V2 that I thought might get you guys a little bit there, because it's going from the equation, which some of you guys seem to think is pretty tricky, which it is, especially if you're learning it for the first time. Okay, now V3, this is probably the most challenging of all of the IXL assignments, because it's asking you about the equations of circles, right? And it's asking you to write the equation. Okay, so if you're asked to write the equation, well, again, the only 2 things that matter, the only 2 things that always matter when you're talking about equations of circles, and that is what is the center, and in this case, that center is 0, 0, right? And then what is the radius? And in this case, yeah, I'm using the same example over and over again. That radius is 6, right? So all you do here is you just fill in those blanks, much like you saw us do before, right? Here we got 0, 0, here we get 6, right? So and again, simplified, you don't have to write -0, right? Because it's already there, right? All you'd have to do really is square 6, right? And get your 36. Okay. All right, let's see if we get a little more complicated example. Yes, we do, right? Slightly more complicated example, but the same strategy remains in place, right? What is my center? Oh, it looks like it's 3, 6. Sorry, my comma's a little funky there. My radius, it looks to be 2, right? And then all I'm doing is I am just plugging in right? For you formula people, right, this is what they call H, this is what they call K, right? And then my radius goes here, right? So 2 squared. So when simplifying it, right, you would just leave these things exactly the same, and then you would just write this over here as 4, right? That's how you would simplify. Okay, now I know that was review from the big picture stuff, but hey, why not go over it again? And the truth is, if you're watching this deep into the video, you're probably benefiting from the review, so that's fantastic. Okay, now the paper assignment. Now, one of the first things I always want to talk about with the paper assignment is how do you submit your work? And you guys have this down by now, but just in case there's any confusion, right? You got two options. You know, make a copy. Actually, I guess you probably wouldn't copy the Google Doc unless you want to make it into a new Google Doc. But what the vast majority of you guys are doing anyway is option B, which is just putting your work in a piece of paper, taking a picture, right, and then just emailing it to your teacher. But the truth is, you guys, you know, we want to give you credit for your work. So any way you can show your teacher your work, just do it, get it to us. Give us the gift of giving you a good grade, which is a 2 out of 2. So anyway, let's get into that paper assignment. So here are the directions. Fill in the radius and center from each of the equations, for each circle equation, then match each equation with the graph letter. So you guys see it's a page of I guess, equations, page of graphs, and you got to fill them out and match them. So I'm going to give you 2 examples, right? So yes, I am giving away 2 answers. There are 10 questions. I'm giving away 2 of them. I don't know. Maybe your teacher's going to be mad at me. But hey, you still got to do 8 on your own. And the truth is, if you watch this far in the video, you probably deserve to get 2 freebies. So anyway, here you have it, you guys. The radius, again, the only 2 things that matter, the radius and the center. Okay, so here, number 1. And by the way, just to be clear, this would be on 2 pieces of paper. I'm just putting them next to each other because they do match. This is one of the answers. So the radius here, okay, so it looks like the radius is going to be the square root of 9, right? So I'll just write that down, the square root of 9, which is, of course, 3. 3 is your radius. That's the real answer. And then the center, I'm going to zero this out. So what value of x would make this 0? Oh, it's -2, right? And here, what value of y would make that 0? Well, it's obvious, right? It's 0, right? That is your center, right? And for you formula people, just to keep consistent, I like explaining this 2 ways every single time, right? But this is your formula. Just so you guys can kind of see how everything fits in there, right? Minus -2 is the same as +2, right? -0, of course, is just the same as y. Y minus 0 is the same as y. And then radius squared, of course, it would have to be 3 that you would square to get 9, right? So for you formula people, that's how that works, right? And so now it just matches. Okay, the answer is, I know I gave it away, graph F. But the reason it matches is because we have center -2, 0. Right? If you just look at that circle, right, that's the center. And then the radius, so in other words, the distance from that center to any point on the circle is 3, and that's why that's the radius. And that's why this graph and this equation match. Okay, the next one that I am giving away for free. You got to do 8 yourself, but I'm giving 2 away for free, right? Same thing. And this time, you know what, I always say it my way. So this time I'm going to do it first for you formula people. I'm going to give it to you guys formula style. So for you formula folks, right? Okay, so here, right, so h would have to be -2, right? Because minus -2 gets you +2, right? -2, right? And here, k would have to be +3, right? Because, right, it's just -3. So that is your center. And then your radius is going to be the square root of 9, which is 3. Right. And for those of you guys that like my zeroed out technique, right, it's -2 + 2 would zero that out, right? 3 minus 3 would zero this out, right? So either way you slice it, this is the center, this is the radius. The only 2 things that matter, and if you see graph G here, right, we got -2, +3 is that center. And if you look at, yeah, the radius from this to any point on that circle is 3, right? And there you have it. Okay, you guys. So anyway, that is it. That is the entire assignment. That is the big picture, right? That is the wrap up from assignment number 1, and then the paper assignment preview, right? I gave you away 2 for free, but you still got to do 8 on your own. All right. So if you have any questions about any of this, yes, you can reach out to your teacher. You can even reach out to me if you want. All right. Or you can just go back to the section on the video and rewatch it. Anyway, I wish you guys all the best. We miss you guys. And hey, good luck with these assignments.